This is Kevin Moore from timba.com with an introduction to Beyond Salsa Piano Volume 14 on Tirso Duarte and Charanga Habanera.
No hay muchachita, ¿qué problema tú te vas a buscar? Mira, si te lo dije bien clarito, con candela no se va a jugar. Está bueno ya, ya me cansé, está bueno ya. Está bueno de bla, bla, bla. Tú ya me tienes hasta aquí, ¿hasta dónde me piensas llevar? Ya me cansé, está bueno ya. Está bueno de bla, bla, bla. Mira, yo te lo juro que no aguanto más. Ya me cansé, está bueno ya. Hasta aquí, ¿hasta dónde me piensas llevar? Ya me cansé, está bueno ya, está bueno ya, está bueno de bla, bla, bla. Vamos, está bueno ya, está bueno de bla, bla, bla.
Tirso Duarte is known best today as a singer, but he was also one of the key architects of the timba piano revolution. His late 90s work with Charanga Habanera was bursting with dramatic innovations, many of which have yet to be fully exploited. Like the work of Arsenio and Lili Martinez, the tumbao studied here, even as of 2015, are many years ahead of their time. If you study them carefully, you'll find that they open the door to a largely unexplored world of creative possibilities. In the book, we cover Tirso's early years and the series of events that led him to Charanga Habanera. For this video, we'll take the opposite approach and examine the series of events that led David Calzado and Charanga Habanera to Tirso Duarte. That series of events began with great intrigue and scandalous mutinies that split one charanga into two or more rival groups, each striving for supremacy and jabbing at each other with coded trash talk in its song lyrics. You probably think I'm talking about the infamous Charanga Habanera, Charanga Forever battle of the late 90s. But if you read Beyond Salsa Bass Volume 2, you'll know that I could just as easily be talking about the 1950s and about David Calzado's father, Sergio Calzado, who helped found Estrellas Cubanas when they split off from Jose Fajardo's legendary charanga, itself born out of the famous Arcaño mutiny. And that was just one of the great controversies of the golden age of the 1950s. There was also the great Jorin America del 55 brouhaha that occurred around the same time. Connecting these warring clans of charangueros, David Calzado's uncle, Rudy Calzado, sang for both Jorin and Fajardo. David Calzado, like Pupi Pedroso, was born into charanga royalty in the very heart of this raging 1950s Havana scene. As we learned in Beyond Salsa Bass Volume 3, both men figured prominently in the post-revolution charanga scene. Pupi joined Reve and then Van Van, while Calzado, a violinist and arranger by trade, wound up in another of the greatest modern charangas, Orquesta Ritmo Oriental. Both Calzado and his first great collaborator, Juan Carlos Gonzalez, cite the seminal influence of Ritmo Oriental on their rhythm section bloques, tempo changes, choreography, and overall creative concept. Another important connection between the two groups is timbalero Eduardo Lasaga, a key element in Charanga Habanera's chemistry and the son of Ritmo Oriental's leader, Enrique Lasaga. After his 5-year stint with La Ritmo, Calzado landed a 5-year gig playing violin in a traditional charanga band each summer at a tourist hotel in Monte Carlo. The band was given the generic name Charanga Habanera, meaning simply a group from Havana with violins and flute. They played traditional repertoire and even made an album, including some songs originally recorded by David's father, Sergio.
Mi mamá no quiere que tenga novia.
Mi mamá no quiere que tenga novia. Por eso yo, por lo mismo lo voy a hacer. Por lo mismo lo voy a hacer. Por lo mismo lo voy a hacer.
If we make a study of history's truly transcendent live bands, we find that they all have one thing in common: a period of years during which they played together nearly every night in a comfortable setting. Bird and Diz at Minton's and Monroe's, Arsenio and Arcanio at the social clubs, the Beatles in Hamburg, James Brown's 300 nights a year on the club circuit, Los Van Van at Disco Azucar, the Pedrito Martinez group at Guantanamera, and so on. The Monte Carlo contract provided Charanga Habanera with just such a training ground. As they honed their Fajardo and Ritmo Oriental influences, two other crucial ingredients gradually found their way into the mix. First was Afro-North American music, primarily those artists who passed through the same Monte Carlo club on tour, acts like Kool and the Gang, Tina Turner, Ray Charles, and James Brown. But by far the biggest influence was a band that never played Monte Carlo, Earth, Wind, and Fire. In homage, Charanga Habanera has made a tradition of beginning their live shows with an excerpt from the EWF classic, In the Stone. But we get ahead of ourselves. These Afro-North American musical ideas lay dormant in the minds of Calzado and Gonzalez until they experienced the impact of their fourth and most decisive influence, Havana itself. In our Volume 12 video, we examined the musical ramifications of the special period as they pertain to Los Van Van. For Charanga Habanera, the 5-year Monte Carlo contract began well before all hell had started to break loose in Cuba, but with each subsequent year, the charangueros returned home to a very different Havana from the one they'd left just a few months earlier. By the end of the 5 years, the timba revolution was well underway at the hands of N.G. La Banda, and the Havana public had little interest in Charanga Habanera's traditional repertoire. N.G. La Banda used Afro-North American influences in a very different way from what Calzado and Gonzalez envisioned, but they used them openly and with phenomenal success. More importantly, they showed the way forward for all involved by balancing the outside influences with fresh Afro-Cuban ideas from Huahuancó and Santeria music. At some point around the beginning of 1993, Charanga Habanera took Havana by storm with a new style that drew profoundly on Fajardo, Ritmo Oriental, Earth, Wind and Fire, Eneje la Banda, and Rumba, but that didn't sound remotely like any of them. As with the Beatles mix of Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Carole King, and Motown, Charanga Habanera's disparate influences ignited to produce something utterly new. If the term genius can be applied to popular music at all, it applies here. That song, Extraños Ateos, was part of Charanga Habanera's first album of original material, Me Sube la Fiebre, recorded at Egrem and later released on CD as Love Fever. By this point, the Havana public was in full mania mode and providing more than enough inspiration to ignite the chemistry of a dozen of the greatest groups in Cuban music history. Charanga Habanera's new style created such a furor that they were quickly given the opportunity to record another album, longer and with much better recording quality, for Magic Music in Barcelona. It included improved versions of two of the biggest hits of Me Sube la Fiebre, including the title track, and for this reason Me Sube is often skipped over, but doing so will deprive you of hearing and studying three of the greatest tracks of the era: Pregón del Chocolate, Te la voy a liquidar, and above all, the aforementioned Extraños Ateos, a truly magical track full of riveting breaks, folkloric influences, this extraordinary passage in which the piano, bass, two overlapping coro sections, and the horns begin at different points in the clave with equal authority, creating a truly amazing tapestry of riffs. Hey You Loco was a glistening masterpiece that vaulted La Charanga, as John Lennon used to say, to the toppermost of the poppermost. But Leo Vera's sudden defection to Irakere threatened to nip this hard-won success in the bud. It was at this point that Calzado made the first in a series of moves that established him, alongside Juan Formel and the two Elio Reves, as one of the great jugglers of musical talent in Cuban history. Everyone was stunned when he replaced Leo Vera with his girlfriend's 16-year-old son. But that girlfriend was the legendary diva Beatriz Marquez, and her son, Michel, debuted with a historic vocal performance on what remains Charanga Habanera's biggest all-time hit, Nube Pasajera.
Yo,
With Nube Pasajera, Los Van Van Soy Todo, Manolín's La Bola, and Isaac's La Vida Sin Esperanza ringing through the streets, all of Havana sensed that something historic was happening, and the next three Charanga Habanera albums were indeed created with a palpable sense of history, as well as an almost Beatlesque attention to detail. Every tumbao, bloque, and guia was meticulously burnished as if they knew we'd still be poring over them decades later. At timba.com, in an epic labor of love and with the contributions of many people, we've documented the first 5 Charanga Habanera albums on a song-by-song basis, with backstories, analyses, audio clips, and full lyrics, including guias, interjections, and analysis of quotations. If I go any deeper into these albums here, I'll be in danger of exhausting all of the space on YouTube's server, so if you want more detail, head to timba.com. As an overview, I would say that Hey You Loca, Pa Que Se Entere La Habana, Tremendo Delirio, and Charanguero Mayor are equally great in terms of musical quality, but so drastically different stylistically that each listener will probably have strong favorites. What ties them together is the quality of the inspiration and the attention to detail. Due to an injury to bongocero and resident gymnast Orlando Leyva, Pa Que Se Entere La Habana is the only Charanga Habanera album to use overdubbing in the main percussion, with Eduardo Lasaga playing both timbales and bongo, resulting in some very interesting creative twists. The album is a celebration of the arrival of a great singer and contains a series of social chronicles like Super Turistica and El Temba that are significantly edgier than those of Formel and Pupi. Darker and edgier still was 1997's Tremendo Delirio, featuring the addition of singer-songwriter Danny Losada and a very creative infusion of rap in the coros, and blues notes in González's tumbaos.
Bueno, mami, ahora tú me pides que te bese ahí y yo te digo que no te voy a dar nada, ni por la noche, ni por la mañana, porque yo no te voy a dar nada, ni por la noche, ni por la mañana. Yo no te voy a dar nada, ¿por qué? Porque no me da la gana. Y tú lo sabes. Yo no te voy a dar nada. Charanguero, nena. Ni por la noche, ni por la mañana. Sí. Yo no te voy a dar nada.
It was this material that La Charanga was playing when they arrived by helicopter at the 1997 Festival de la Juventud y los Estudiantes and wound up being suspended by the government for 6 months. The show that instigated the suspension was little different from the nightclub act that La Charanga performed every night, although Michel did climb the lighting tower and perform a brief and thoroughly G-rated striptease.
Lola, ay nomás, Lolita. Lola, Lola, está muy buena tu cacerola. ¿Y cómo dice? Que no.
But the real problem was that the concert was on live TV in front of an international audience of very serious young communist students. The song playing when the plug was pulled was Losada's Usa Condon, without doubt the edgiest and most controversial song in Cuban music history. The album version is what Abel Robaina calls a PSA, or public service announcement song, with a strong safe sex message.
Me tienes sin cuidado. Y me pregunto qué está pasando, mira. Me tienes sin cuidado. Donde quiera que camino me dicen por todos lados. Me tienes sin cuidado. Si el consejo te lo di, si el consejo te lo he dado. Me tienes sin cuidado. Si no me quieres creer a mí, que te lo diga el mambo. Me tienes sin cuidado. Cuídate, cuídate, usa condón. Cuídate, nena. Me tienes sin cuidado. Cuídate, cuídate, usa condón. Bueno, mi vida, si te tienes sin cuidado, no te vayas a creer que a mí también. Me tienes sin cuidado. Oye, cuídate, cuídate, usa condón. Úsalo, mamita, úsalo, mi amor. Usa ese condón y tú verás que vacilón. Me tienes sin cuidado. Cuídate, cuídate, usa condón. Cuídate, cuídate, usa condón. Dale, mi amor. Dale, mi nena. Cuídate, cuídate, usa condón. Dale, mi amor. Bueno, muchacha, ¿por qué no? Hagamos el amor, pero te voy a poner de condición este consejo que dice así. Escucha lo que es para ti. ¿Por qué no? Hagamos el amor. Un momentico ahí. Enséñame el condón. Ah, no. Se te quedó. ¿Quién te mandó? ¿Por qué no?
Like Azúcar Negra's Almas Disfrazadas,
Y si no quieres pagar, camina derecho.
¡Ay, chico!
Y si no quieres pagar, camina derecho. Y si no quieres pagar, camina derecho. Cuidarse la vida tiene un precio.
¡Ay, tú ten cuidado!
Y si no quieres pagar, camina derecho.
and Danden's anti-smoking anthem El Humo o la Vida,
Recomendación sencilla, aparta esa cajetilla.
This type of assignment seemed to bring out a particularly high level of musical creativity, and Usa Condon is indeed one of the best and most inspired arrangements of the era, with the same sort of tumbao counterpoint we heard in Extraños Ateos, and an abundance of glorious melodic and rhythmic hooks.
Mira, nene, te voy a decir el consejo que le di a Michelle y no me quiso escuchar. Pues tú sabes cómo me contestó. Así. Me tienes sin cuidado. Así decía Mayito, y mira lo que le ha pasado. Me tienes sin cuidado. También lo dijo David Calzado y mira cómo se ha quedado.
The trouble began with the live version of Usa Condon, in which Losada turns the message on its head with his a cappella coro, although trumpeter Poyeto follows this by chastising him and restating the original moral. All of this was scripted, of course, and part of the show well before the suspension concert.
¿Cómo le gusta a los cubanos hacer el amor, muchachos? Con condón, tu a capela. Vuelve a repetir lo que pregunto. ¿Cómo le gusta a todos ustedes hacer el amor? Con condón, tu a capela. No, no, no y no. Te voy a llamar la atención por estar dando esos malos consejos a esta juventud, que no son promiscuos ni mucho menos. Ese no es el verdadero.
But it was a drug reference, not Michel Massa's striptease or the condom controversy, that finally pushed the censors over the edge. When the TV feed was cut, the show itself went on, and the next flashpoint was Hay que tocármela, a song so explicit that even Calzado never dared to record it. It is a great song, though, and it's well worth seeking out a bootleg. The suspension provided a convenient exit point for Juan Carlos Gonzalez, who had long been disgruntled over receiving insufficient credit for his arrangements. If you compare timba.com's first-hand accounts from Gonzalez and Calzado, you'll find many contradictions as to who created what, but at the end of the day, it was the chemistry between these two giants, La Saga, Pedro Pablo, Manuel Arranz, and the singers that made the magic possible. Gonzalez made an extraordinary album with Losada, then briefly rejoined his old comrades in Charanga Forever. He's now in Torino, Italy, so we can still hope for more brilliance from his pen. Losada is in Las Vegas as of 2015. With their popularity exploding due to their new forbidden fruit status, La Charanga was allowed to return from their suspension after only a few months, but the next summer, before they had recorded again, the entire band left en masse to form Charanga Forever, leaving Calzado with only Michel Massa and the name Charanga Habanera. In what has to be considered the greatest mutiny rebound in Cuban music history, Calzado put together a tremendous young band that was just as tight, just as popular, and had significantly higher musicianship in the horns and in the percussion section. Even more amazing, Calzado found a new collaborator with whom he achieved a very different but equally intense and productive creative chemistry as he'd achieved with Gonzalez. That collaborator was Tirso Duarte, bringing us, at last, to the period covered by Beyond Salsa Piano, Volume 14. Michel Massa himself had left the group by early 1999, but not before Tirso had written him two classic songs. The first, Charanguero Mayor, came in at number 5 in the timba.com readers poll for the best timba song of all time. We begin each chapter with the backstory of the song in question, and then learn each piano tumbao. Tirso always created multiple hook tumbaos for each arrangement. For each tumbao, we learn some of Tirso's many controlled improvisation variations and then study La Charanga's approach to gear changes, which also varies somewhat from tumbao to tumbao. There are 3 pairs of audio files, fast and slow, for each main tumbao. The A and B files have the piano left hand in the left channel and the right hand in the right channel. The C and D files have the bass tumbao on the right and the piano on the left, so you can use your balance control to practice along with just the bass. Finally, the E and F files have the rhythm section going through a full gear cycle in the right channel and the piano in the left. In cases like this one, we begin with the previous piano tumbao so you can hear how Tirso makes the transition. We also analyze the fascinating conga marches devised by Orlando Mengual for Massacote gear. Michel Massa also sang Tirso's beautiful composition Confianza. He left before Charanga Habanera could officially record it, but both Michel and Tirso have recorded their own versions of the song on their solo albums. We give Confianza the same treatment in terms of controlled improvisation and gear studies. El Bla Bla Bla, with its 4 glorious piano tumbaos, was sung by Ned Mota, Sombria's replacement. We give these tumbas the same treatment as well, and we also provide full piano and bass charts of the entire arrangement in both standard lead sheet format and full note-for-note transcriptions, along with a detailed explanation of how the gear system works. Looking ahead, I have enough material for several more books on Tirso Duarte. Each tumbao is an adventure unto itself. But our next video will be on Beyond Salsa Percussion Volume 1, an encyclopedia of Latin rhythms with a special step-by-step audio method for quickly learning them. Knowing everyone else's parts can prove very useful for pianists in gig situations. So stay tuned.